evening, Rian Coetzee, Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions. And I am back with Francois Leroux for part 2 of shotgun shooting, the finer details of shotgun shooting. Francois, one of the senior instructors of the Lone Operator course, thank you for joining us for part 2 of this video.
Rian, thank you. Good to be back.
Let's talk, let's carry on with the conversation from where we stopped in the previous video. Shotgun carry methods. These vary quite wildly depending on context. You know, home defense and patrolling in vehicles, walking in the bush, etc. What are some practical pros and cons of cruiser ready versus fully loaded carry, and how do slings specifically factor into fast deployment?
So this is something you have to work with. You have to play with it, see what works for you. Because it's not one of those. There's no one size fits all on that. Even with slings on anything, there is no one size fits all. Body types are different. The kind of way we carry them, whether you carry them in vehicles or anything, makes a difference. And also, shotguns come in such a variety of shapes and sizes that you need to really kind of customized to what you want. So I like what they call a combat shotgun, which is basically a medium size with maximum capacity, of course. So mine's got 6 in the tube. My tube is basically as long as my barrel. And then my other one, I've got the tube is about 2/3 as long as the barrel, which I've only got 4 then. So the barrel length on those two isn't much different, but the capacity does make a difference. So yeah, so that's what I prefer. I've got a standard sling on mine. With shotguns, it becomes difficult because they do get a bit front heavy because of the tube carrying the ammo, and that also depends on the type of ammo you carry. So yeah, so slings, you need to really go and play around with what is there, what works. Mine is still a simple one without any funny rails or attachments, but you get some of the ones that are nice. You get nice slings out there. So it's really a personal choice. Kind of figure it out.
And again, back to training. I know some people are saying, you're always hammering on training, but the fact is that training is the place where you start learning about these things, probably the fastest. I think there's a difference if you are walking in the veld all day long, maybe hunting for something with a shotty, or carrying it around for a specific work purpose, whether it's a defensive role or patrolling or whatever. And you need to play with it. I fully agree, so that you can figure out what works. And then obviously from there, you need to, whatever choice of carry you decide on for whatever purpose you want to do, you need to practice bringing that shotgun into play so that you can get your first shot off as quickly and accurately as possible. Those are things that you cover in the courses on Lone Operator for shotguns, right?
Yes, that is. Yeah, so we carry all of that. And that's a big thing, is just come and do it. Have some fun on the range, and you learn a lot. Yeah, I don't know why people are so anti hammering on training, because training is critical. I've been shooting since I was 6, and yes, every time I go on a course, I learn so much more. My dad was proficient. He taught me a lot, but that was back then, the stuff he knew. He was into the military, and I think 65 or something like that. So yeah, the training, even since then, from up to the 80s, the stuff changed so much. The firearms changed so much. My dad was a bolt action guy. He said, no, bolt actions are fine. The guys waste ammo if they've got semi-autos and full autos, kind of thing. Because he's a logistics guy. That's what he thinks about. But training changes. You can't do a training course and think, no, for the next 20 years I'll be fine. It's
Yes.
perishable. I see it in myself. If I don't train something for a while, I see it evaporate. So yeah, you do need to hammer on training and get comfortable and confident. Well, that's one of the best things you see on the range is when a student comes there and they're a bit skeptic and this and that, and they walk off there and they're just confident. They're capable. It's an amazing thing to see. And knowing that guy, if something does happen and he has to protect his family or his own life, okay, we've given him the tools. He's ready to go.
Yeah, he's now increased his survival odds
Definitely.
actively. Ammunition choice when it comes to shotguns. I mean, that's a big part of the whole shotgun effectiveness thing. Can you maybe break down the real world performance differences between different categories of buckshot, birdshot, slugs? And how should viewers decide what suits their requirement the best?
So basically the three categories we mostly see in South Africa is the 7.5 birdshot, which is basically what most people shoot clay with, or if they do shoot bird stuff like that. So that's basically the small little balls. It's really, really small. It's a couple of millimeters, well, a millimeter and a little bit. So that's in calling it packing a punch. That's not necessarily something that's gonna do the job. Trying to stop someone, especially someone that's really motivated, it's definitely gonna hurt. Like the olden days, they used to say put salt or koring into it. But yeah, it's not there to necessarily kill someone. But I would also not suggest that, okay, I'm going to load this now and it's just going to scare the guys off. Yes, these guys are sometimes so doped up and aggressive that if you do anger them, that it's just going to make things worse. So I would not suggest that in self-defense, but it's excellent for training. It's also much cheaper. So you can buy boxes of the 7.5s for much cheaper. Then you get the rest is buckshot and slugs. So the standards we usually get is the double odd buck, which is the American term, and the triple odd buck, which is basically 00 buckshot and 000 buckshot. So that's basically just a size difference. It's basically up to like a 8 millimeter size ball, which is much better. Like I said, it's anything from 5 to 8 projectiles in a shell, which depends on the brand and all of that. Bit more expensive, but definitely packs more of a punch. One of my instructors always said it's like getting shot by a 9mm 8 times in the chest, but with one trigger pull kind of thing. So it definitely, the chances of putting someone down, as long as you have proper aiming and proper sight picture, definitely going to do it. So I would always suggest for self-defense, buck. Even if it's the shorter shells that's got less 4 or 5 bucks in it, little balls in it, 100% perfect. That's going to do the job. Then there's always the slugs. I wouldn't suggest the slug for home defense or anything like that. It will definitely, you'll put a guy down on that, no issue with that. The kick is unfortunately a bit more because of your equal and opposite reactions. And the damage it's going to definitely get done. But yeah, it's unless you're hunting Bigfoot, I wouldn't necessarily suggest carrying a slug.
If you do hunt Bigfoot and you get him, you really need to put a video up on YouTube because that's going to make you famous.
Definitely.
Definitely. Patterning. I think it's a logical next question after talking about ammunition choice. It's often overlooked, but it can drastically affect performance. So how does a shooter go about testing their shotgun and their ammunition to determine effective range and shot spread specifically? Because there are a couple of myths about shot spread. And how do they do this in realistic conditions?
Yeah, so it's something you have to go to the range and go test your shotgun, see what it does. So mine, which is now shorter barrel, considered a compact shotgun, which is supposed to give you this massive spread, it actually doesn't. It was quite surprising that it doesn't give you that much of a spread. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it, which is very interesting. Methods that they use to test it and so on. And in the movies, we always see all of these interesting things about door frames and doors being taken out by a guy standing 2 feet away with a shotgun. Yeah, that's not how it works. You only see patterning after quite a few feet where it actually starts spreading out, and they actually shape they shape nicely together. The buckshot and the birdshot do keep together, and it's interesting if you Google around the patterns that some of these shotguns with chokes, without chokes, all of this stuff, how interesting it actually look. It's something if you are interested in it, it's very nice to go look at. So patterning isn't something where you now have to be close to someone. You now need to be within 3 or 4 or 5 meters, otherwise you're going to miss them, kind of thing. So yeah, so it is something that has been greatly exaggerated by word of mouth and movies, but it's actually not at all. So yeah, just take your shotgun, take a piece of cardboard, put a target up and shoot it from a couple of distances and see what it does.
Yeah, get to know your own firearm so that you understand. In other words, don't try and learn these things if you ever have to, God forbid, use this thing under any sort of pressure. That's not the time to learn.
No.
I want to talk about optics because optics on shotguns have definitely increased in popularity quite drastically. Specifically red dots. How do these things impact on speed and precision in practical use? And are they worth the added weight and complexity for defensive or competitive shooters?
I would say if you train them enough, yes. Because a red dot is also something that you need to train. A red dot isn't something that magically makes you a better shooter. Just like buying a better, more expensive firearm isn't going to make you a better shooter. Picking up a red dot does take practice, getting used to it. Picking up a bead on the top, on the front of your shotgun is much easier than a red dot because it doesn't take as much practice, but you do lose focus with your target, which a red dot, because you're looking through it, you have better target focus, which is always what you want, especially in a defensive situation where you can't afford to take your eyes off of some of these guys. They are just, yeah, busy as there's some words I can use, but let's not go there. So yeah, they are definitely have their place. They are amazing. Red dots are the way of the future. I can't wait to see what's after that. But yeah, they're worth it, definitely. But as long as you practice it, it's not something that's gonna make you a better shooter. You have to work it just like a shotgun without a red dot. Without practice, doesn't mean anything.
But it doesn't add that much weight to a shotgun. I mean, a shotgun itself isn't necessarily the lightest weapon out there, especially if it's loaded. So red dot sights, it's not like they add another half a kilo.
No, it's a couple of grams that you're adding onto it. Even if you take one of the biggest red dots, you're adding a few grams on it. You're not even going to get, I think, to half a kilo on that. So yeah, it's definitely worth it. The losses in, let's call it weight, it's going to give you more bulkiness than weight in any case. It's going to be a bit higher on the top, but it's definitely worth it. If you train that thing, you're going to be proficient. If you learn that red dot, know your shotgun, you're going to do well.
Okay, I think that's some good advice for wannabe shotgun shooters out there. That's potentially something that is worthwhile investing in because they are not necessarily cheap additions to any firearm. But if it makes it worth your while, then it's probably something that you can and should consider quite seriously. So, final question: if someone wanted to build a regular practice, a practice routine, say a weekly routine or whatever, but regular, around speed and precision with their shotguns, what should that look like, including things like dry fire, live fire, and then some skill-specific drills?
So I would always suggest come do a course first. We love it when we see people that are newbies on the course because there's no bad habits we now need to get rid of. And then you learn so much on that course. We're going to give you so much information that you can now take and go practice and go improve, because that's one of the biggest thing of doing a course is you see your shortcomings. I adapt quickly to loading, but site picture might be an issue. Then you focus on site picture, or loading is an issue, but take targets downrange. That's excellent. So yeah, it gives you something to load and to work and to just play around with. But yeah, dry fire routines is always the way to go. Getting used to your shotgun, like we said, and yeah, just play with it, have fun with it, and make it interesting. Always make it interesting. The day you make your practice and your training boring, then you start losing that interest to learn. And then go do another course. It's always, that's what I love doing, is improving yourself. Go do a course. See, okay, yeah, where's my shortcomings now? Because that's what we, in the end of the day, want to do. We want to keep on improving. And if you've got a nice dry fire routine, just practice loading it. You don't even have to run speed necessarily. Just getting used to where's everything on the shotgun. How do I get the rounds in? Do I get the rounds in accurately every time? Is it consistent? Am I consistent when I bring it up? Am I on my sights? And yeah, just working that stuff, and yeah, then starting to play around, chasing speed a little bit here, doing a course there. Yeah, I would never say just dry fire. Always come to the range, because at the end of the day, the bang and the kick is half the fun. So yeah, just find the ways and the places to improve.
So is that a typical dry firing routine that you yourself would follow, where you get yourself proficient in on all the points that you've just mentioned?
Yeah, so I've got a routine where I've got stages of mine. So I've got just a basic stage where I've got just run the shotgun a little bit, bring it up, make sure I've got my sights, I'm on target, pump it, shoot it, make sure I'm there. Okay, happiness. Then I feel comfortable behind it. Then and I wouldn't necessarily do this all in one day. I'll take 5 minutes on a Monday, and then 5 minutes on a Friday, and then 2 minutes on a Sunday, or whatever. And then one day I'll just, okay, we're gonna run. First shot, okay, it's dry, because I'm now comfortable with my sights. I'm comfortable in my shoulder. Everything kind of feels where it needs to be, and then I'll run it dry. Okay, it's dry. Now I need to load from my saddle. Then I'll practice running, just loading from my belt, just running interesting things. So yeah, just to kind of like play around with it a bit.
Okay, and just again on that point, for the viewers, maybe not everybody is fully on par with it. We were now talking about dry firing at home. That means you're not really shooting. Okay, don't do that.
Yes, please don't.
Shooting is done at a range. That's what they're made. Francois, thank you so much. Unless you've got something to add, I'm going to end this conversation here. That'll be the end of part 2 of this 2-part series. I really appreciate your time and your valuable inputs, and I trust the viewers will find value in it as well.
Hey, thank you, Riaan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Just for the viewers, again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. As always, we appreciate that support. And if you are interested in learning more about the Lone Operator courses, again, there's a link below the video in the description. Click on that, follow it. Go check the video out, go check the info out so that you can understand. And we hope to see you on one of the Lone Operator ranges soon. Thank you. Francois, have a good evening.
Thank you, Riaan. Thank you.